I go for my morning walk here, no destination, no podcast, no plan, just out. And somewhere in the first 10 minutes, something in my head starts to go quiet. Not silence, just quieter. And I've started to think that 10 minutes might be one of the more important parts of my day. Now, the day is relatively ordinary. I'm just walking around. There's no necessary, it's not a hike. It's not a busy moment. It's just people going about their morning in an ordinary neighborhood life. Now, I do say in this particular area here, I do enjoy the friendly smiles and the hellos and that calm, inviting energy. And it's that consistency that delivers something that feels increasingly rare. A stretch of time with no input, demanding a response. I get to start paying attention to why that feels like such a relief. And what I found, I think, says less about walking and much more about the rest of the day and what it's actually doing to us. I think what we've lost without noticing. I mean, the moment we wake up, we usually wake up with our phones off the nightstand. It's got notifications. We've got decisions to make. We've got information noise coming in at all levels. The mind is immediately in response mode and rarely leaves it. This wasn't always true. There used to be natural gaps in the day, commutes without screens, errands without earbuds, moments between things that just were. These gaps are almost entirely gone now. And they weren't empty. They were doing something. Those in-between moments were when the mind caught up with itself. When you processed what happened, you noticed how it felt, worked things out without realizing you were working things out. We optimized them with consistence filled with content, productivity. You got to always be stimulated. And we don't really notice what we lost until the mental backlog started piling up with nowhere to go. And for me personally, I think this is one of the things I've really started noticing when I'm back here in the Philippines and I'm able to explore the emptiness, the relax and the different levels of peace. There's such a value of just being able to walk and not feel that pressure that something's got to get done. I can notice a huge difference even just going for a walk back home in my country or in the Philippines. Even in my country, that walk, it has that underlying vibe, that underlying energy of hard to relax and let go. I mean, the first few minutes, the mind is always busy, no matter where you are, even in paradise. It's still running through yesterday's unfinished thoughts, tomorrow's agenda, but you have to give it time. And this is where I say part of it is also the environment, choosing to put yourself in the proper environment. Like I said earlier, I've noticed even the difference when I'm doing my walks in, Canada, for example. Yeah, there's no reason to be uptight or stressed, but it is completely a different environment. Now, I'm not saying I can't find those moments, but they are harder to grasp. And no matter where you are, the gradual shift is still gradual. Somewhere around about 10 minutes, the grip kind of loosens and you stop narrating and start noticing. I'm not saying that it's actually dramatic, but a prime example for where I'm going through a simple thing. I'm walking down, I see a vendor setting something up simple, relaxed, and you can see everybody in a more peaceful way of thinking. And that type of thinking happens without even trying. How solutions surface, how feelings get clarified, how things you've been turning over just quietly resolve themselves when you stop pushing at them. And quite often when I come back from these walks, I get a little bit better of that feeling that something has been sorted even though nothing was actively worked on. So none of this is productive, and none of it is exercise in any serious way. It's just space, unconstructed, unoptimized, undemanding space. And it turns out that's exactly what a mind under constant pressure is starving for. And I often think this is actually kind of what's happening on these walks and why a simple thing sometimes is overlooked. The mind needs unconstructed time. Like the mind isn't just a machine. It has a maintenance mode too. A state where it has to kind of sort, integrate, settle. I mean, sleep does some of this, but so does quiet, aimless, low-demanding movement. I think this is one of the reasons why I also notice that underlying weight being lifted when I do return back and forth. I noticed a difference between going to North America versus Asia, and in Philippines in particular. When you remove all the constructed time from your day, when every gap is filled with input, the maintenance never happens. Things pile up. You feel unnoticeably overwhelmed without even being able to say why. You feel tired in a way that rest doesn't fix. And on top of that, you almost feel guilty for trying to rest to fix something. The walk isn't the cure, but it's a gap, a genuine, unoptimized gap in a day that otherwise has none. The mind giving a little bit of a space and nothing urgent to respond to tends to do something quietly remarkable. It really starts to work on its own. It works these things out. When you come from a culture that treats productivity as a measure of time well spent, well, a walk with no output, no content consumed, no achievement at the end looks like waste of time by every modern metric. And when you get to spend time, in a place that this doesn't exist on the same level, example, the Philippines, you really get to see the difference and the importance of this and the value that it can do for the mind, the body, and the soul. The settled feeling, the lighter mental load, that's doing something real. It's just doing it in a way that doesn't show up on any list. Here, nobody's optimizing their walk. The peace of environment doesn't demand it. You can move slowly here, and it doesn't feel like you're doing it wrong. In some ways back home, a walk can feel like it should be optimized. The right route, the right pace, hitting a step count. It all just becomes another task, something to mark off your list. Just the permission to do it badly, to wander without worrying about it, to stop when you want, no particular purpose. That is the difference. And that permission, it turns out, is most of what makes it really work. When you stop trying to get something out of it, the walk gives you something in return. You got to ask yourself, how much construction time mentally is actually in your day? And how much unconstructed time do you have in your day? I'm not talking downtime where you're still analyzing and trying to figure things out, or you're filled with scrolling for the next, screen time. Not rest, that's really just recovery, but time with no input, no agenda, no output, no expectations. And if that answer is close to zero, that might be worth sitting with. Not because you might need to start walking more necessarily, but because your mind is running on needs, somewhere to breathe. It needs time to relax. And the walks here remind me of that. They remind me of thinking clearly and feeling settled aren't things you have to chase. When you finally stop filling every quiet moment with something else. And this is what my journey has really been about, a lot of it, finding out those values of these little hidden things. And I do emphasize that, yes, I understand that we all have to have some type of agenda and a goal that we got to work towards. And 99% of the time it comes down to financial, because can we afford to do this? Or we are under the, that we have to have such amount of gains here before we can reward ourselves with relaxing. Now, I've chosen to do something a little bit more extreme. I've chosen to go to a completely different area, a different country, to help gain these kind of things and have them in an easier perspective. If a slower, quieter way of moving through the day is something you're thinking about, then there's more of it here on this particular channel, that's for sure. And more importantly, you'll be able to see how I've chosen and why I've chosen this particular path. I'm not saying you have to move to another country and do this, but I'm saying there's other options out there. For me, this particular move is rejuvenating. And I think for many others, it's doing the same. And if you want to learn more about it, the steps I've taken, how I've gotten here, what I actually have to do to maintain it, financial part of it, how much is it cost, all these kind of things. Because at the end of the day, I'm not blind to that. We know we have to have a living. We have to be able to put food on our tables. By all means, follow along, subscribe. I'll be covering all these bases as well, and what the cost factor is like. And if you engage and leave a comment, I love engaging and replying to these comments, and looking forward to making more videos. Take care, everybody.